Hello, everybody. I hope this was a fun surprise. It's something I've been thinking about for a while, is that I would like to do a stream on Monday, because I find that it's the day of the week when I'm in between streams and I kind of just don't have anything to do and I get real bored. So I thought, well, that's probably a sign to, go ahead and do a little bit of painting in the afternoon. It probably and might not be the set time for it. I'm just kind of eyeballing 3 p.m. my time, but we'll see how it goes. I feel like maybe more folks would be around who normally can't catch the streams. Covington's, hello. Thank you so much for bringing some folks over. Hitachi, thank you for gifting that submarine sandwich. And Ranculus, congrats on 8 months. My goodness gracious, time does fly, doesn't it? Yeah, so we're going to have a bit of an impromptu painting stream today. I haven't quite settled on what I want to do on Mondays. I'm thinking Mondays will be my, extreme wild card. We have wild card Saturdays, but that's kind of just a rotating series of different art things that we can do, digital, Copics, painting. I'm thinking for Monday I could incorporate anything, just kind of switch it up on a whim. Monday would probably be the days when I would maybe integrate some plein air in video games, that kind of stuff, bring some of that back. Especially after making Partner, it's less of a stressor to strictly stick to any one idea, and it's kind of encouraging to just have fun and mix it up, and we're not going to go too far off the track. I mean, I'll be making art every single time because that's just the kind of person that I am. But so I've got a lot of paint on my desk right now. I'm just going to move some of these acrylic gouaches to a separate container. But I will switch on over to the live cam because we're just playing it fast and loose today, just doing it casual. But I've missed the video game plein airs. For it, I've actually been brainstorming a fun new layout design so that we can, because my current design, it's better suited for singular viewing experience, whereas with plein airs, I kind of want to have 2 screens set up, one for the game and one for the painting. So I'm going to make something extra special to really emphasize that. But I'm going to switch it over to the desk cam, just so we can hang out and chill while I'm getting set up for the stream today. I'm just going to move these acrylic gouaches to this little, what used to be a candy container, because I just kind of poured them all out on my desk. I bought, those of you who might remember the saga, of me cleaning my room and accidentally smashing the glass jar that I had all of my gouache in. I bought a new one, and this one has an airtight seal, which is actually really good for gouache and paint in general, is to keep it in an airtight environment. So I've got that now, which is great. But the only real trick with it is I have to pour out all of the stuff because it's hard to, I got huge hands. It's hard to fit my meaty paws inside of this jar. So every time I use it, I pour them all out, but I don't need every single paint every time that I paint. So I very rarely use the acrylic gouaches except in specific scenarios. So I'm going to put these in here and then set them off to the side, just so I've got them tucked away. Now I'm going to clean up my brushes. So I was using them on some other artworks, and they have residual paint. Do-do-do-do-do, beep, beep, beep. Oh yeah, 7 more subs till we do another giveaway. Although I might need to adjust that number now because, so to explain how it works behind the scenes, the subs for the emote, because that's why I set it at 40, sub points is what it's based on, and sub points go away when people's subs expire. So the number actually fluctuates on the back end. So it goes down when people stop subscribing, and then it goes up when people subscribe again. So I think it has actually gone down because the month ticked over, so a bunch of subs expired. So I might have to change the parameters of that. I might have to change the yardstick. It's not drastically different, but there might be like 10 additional that we need. Because I would really like to get that sub unlocked. But sub points are, it's a weird system. But how y'all doing? We're at the start of it feels weird. We're at the start of the week. I normally say hello to the beginning of the week on a Tuesday. So it's kind of like, it feels preemptive. But it's nice in a way. I mean, Monday, as you know, can be kind of a rough day. Especially if you're heading back to work or school or whatever. You got responsibilities, etc., etc. It can be a little tedious of a day. Which I think is all the more reason to have just a fun, impromptu, like, silly stream on Mondays. Staying hydrated. It is so hot outside. Like, I mean, for me. But I overheat quickly. I'm a polar bear. But, man, I went out earlier to buy some mustard, and I melted on my way to the store. It was very, very, very hot, but beautiful. A bright blue sky, fluffy clouds. The trees are all popping with those green leaves. So, and I do have an art reference that actually, if you go into the art references, !Discord in the chat if you would like to join our Discord. In the Discord, in the art references section, that's a photograph that I took today. These are some lilac bushes and other various trees that are directly beside the corner store. So I purchased my mustard, and then I took a photograph of the plants because they just looked so pretty. So that's actually what I'm going to be painting today. Geesepeep, hello. Yes, we're painting. It feels weird. Everyone's going to have to follow along carefully, but it is a strange thing. I'm trying to incorporate Mondays into my schedule because I've just noticed the past couple of months of Mondays when I haven't been streaming, like, because we had the special streams with Abby, as many of you know. But all of the other Mondays, I've just gotten kind of bored because we have the stream on Saturday, and then I have 2 days of just kind of doing whatever, working on various and sundry. But that usually wraps up pretty quick, and then I'm just sort of sitting on my hands. So I figured I'd add a bit more streaming into my life because I always love streaming. It calms me. So if you're ever stressed at the beginning of the month, or at the beginning of the month, if you're ever stressed at the beginning of the month, I get it, because that's when rent's due, and that's very stressful. But if you're ever stressed at the beginning of the week, we can all hang out, and that's fun. Ooh, having a productive one finish. That's very nice. I'm excited to paint all these lilacs. There's many small forms, and as you may know, if you've seen lilacs up close, very complex. Very, very complex. So we're going to have to sort of take a step back and observe the shadows and the shapes and the forms and sort of do a bit more of a general feel for this. Honestly, Lion, me too. But I got so bored. I was like, I put up a poll in the Discord for those who don't know, saying like, if I do an extra stream day per week, like when should I do it? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Sunday? And people started voting Monday, and I was like, yes, this is exactly what I was thinking. Yes. And then the poll was over, and I was like, okay, cool. And then like an hour later, I was so bored, and I was just sitting there like, well, I should probably just stream. I should probably just go ahead and start streaming now then. So I'm going to use my water-soluble pencils, and I'm going to get right into it. I would really like to get some more water-soluble pencils in different colors. It's never a huge deal because you know, they're water soluble, so they will melt when I start putting the water down. So if I put light lines down, they'll just sort of disappear. I put harder lines down, they'll stay a little bit more, but they generally aren't able to be seen through like the final work. But it would be really nice to outline different objects in different colors just so I have a better sense of the complexities of shadow and shape. There's a couple of main things I really want to focus on in this picture. So I need to open it up full. And man, those Google phones, they really take a good photograph if there's a lot of light around. Maybe not the best in low light conditions, but we got some really good detail on these lilacs, especially the sort of rim lighting. So the sun is slightly behind over here, kind of going down like this. And so a lot of the lilacs, especially at the top here, are lit from behind, so they have this halo of light around them. And since they're made up of so many teeny tiny little facets and sides and shapes, because, you know, every lilac is made up of hundreds of little mini flowers. So with that in mind, they're able to pick up a lot of light and also reflect light and bounce light within their shape. So they're very glowy, which is great. A little hard to depict. But I also have this tree kind of jutting up out of the top, and it's going like, hello, and just kind of like flying right out of the view. So I want to represent that. It's got kind of almost like a stock quality. And there's some branches jutting out and jutting off all over the dang shop. And it looks really pruned down, and that, I guess, makes a lot of sense since it's right next to the shop. There's probably electrical wires and stuff, and they have to keep pruning it back. In fact, you can see at the top of the photograph, there's a wire that kind of moves directly along straight through here. I'm not going to include that in my painting, though. I want to keep this more natural looking. So then down here we have a continuation, and I'm going to switch back to the blue. Basically, I'm using blue for all the lilac outlines and then sort of browns for where all the shadows are. And I want to keep the blocks very general, extremely general. But just use them to kind of find my place. So I know there's sort of 3 big patches of lilac here. And then they're in a sort of a larger shape. It helps if you think about the complicated shapes as these sort of orbs of space. You think about the shapes having personal space bubbles, basically, and it allows you to plan out where all of these little shapes can live in relation to each other and get your proportions correct. And then in between all of those areas, you'll find that nice negative space of the sky, which we'll paint in behind. Exactly. Yes, Lion, they're hitboxes. Yeah, all you have to do is think about the leaf hitbox, and then you will understand the correct proportions of painting trees. So then down here we have more shadows, and it's a really fascinating kind of view inside the dense area of the lilac bush, because you have these light areas where clearly there's light shining through, but it's in behind the darker leaves in front that are blocking this sunlight that's coming down. So you get kind of these cascading shadows that bounce down along the form. So it's really important to remember the light areas as well as those big dark blocks of shadow, because those contrasts are going to be kind of your bread and butter here. Down to the shadow realm. So shadow, 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 light, light, light. And I'm just kind of scrubbing around where some of these shadows and lights are going. And it won't be a matter of painting every single little leaf or every single little lilac, but it's going to be putting in enough of them that you get the implication of the complexity of those forms. And I'm going to switch up the composition a little bit, only in that, like, I have the lilac sort of coming off the page here because I wanted to focus on this tree kind of flying up out of the lilac bushes. But if you notice on the left side of the photograph, there's this sort of lone other plant. I'm not quite sure what kind of plant or tree that it is, but it's got these really interesting sort of ladder-esque, evenly spaced branches, and I really like the way that looks. So I might incorporate those shapes down here in the dark shadow area of the lilac bush. Like I might put some bright leaves in front, so the sun would be coming down from here and then lighting what's in front of this area. So it's kind of like where the light finally is able to hit something again. With that in mind, we can start dropping some paint down. Make sure I'm using the waxy side of my palette paper here. And then go for it. Heck yeah, TL. So I'm gonna need a lot of strong, cool colors and a couple of warm colors to really balance everything together here. I'm gonna need those bright yellows for those leaves. So I'm gonna sort of put my colors in two big areas. So I've got the leaves, and for those it's gonna be the green, the yellow, a little bit of pink to offset. Now, where did you put my opera rose? Aha! Oops. The opera rose is going to be for the shadows of the leaves. And in the shadows of the leaves, I'll be mostly using purples and some blues. I was watching a really nice video today reinforcing some ideas about shadows. It was basically talking about, like, if you're doing shadows, don't just use dark and desaturated colors, because that sucks all of the life out of the painting. And you can actually use quite a bit of saturation in shadows. Bloop. Okay. We're going to keep using this permanent white until it's all gone. Actually, let's get out the tube wringer. It's been a while since I've wrung a tube. Just put this guy right in there. Give it a squeeze. Ooh. All right. Beautiful. I love my tube wringer. I get a lot of questions about the tube wringer, and I just love it. I love telling people about it, because they're like, why do your tubes look like that? Why are they all, like, so perfectly squeezed? And I say, well, that's the magic of the tube wringer, my friend. It's very satisfying to wring a tube. Get some blue. Hello, hello. Welcome in. Okay, so we pretty much have all the colors we need established right here. I'm going to add a little bit of Spectrum Violet. Not too much, though, because I find every time I put the Spectrum Violet down, I don't really use much of it. Okay, so right up in the sky, we're going to get that nice sunny day, a bright blue sky going. Who showed me the tube wringer? That's a really good question. I feel like I saw it... I feel like the first time I saw a tube wringer and, like, knew that it was an idea was I was at someone's house and they had one for their toothpaste. I think that's the first time that I saw a tube wringer. And I said, well, chances are those are also used probably primarily for paint tubes. But I imagine any kind of tube would work.
Just who is Brock?
But it's very satisfying and also good peace of mind to use everything that's in the tube, because paint can be very expensive, especially gouache paint. Alright, so I'm going to get a bit of primary blue and some white. a nice big brush for this. I'm going to get some clean water on a big brush. And we're going to go right up into the sky. And then also dipping down into where those bushes are as well. We want to get that whole area, because there's some parts here where the sky is actually peeking through.
The most powerful underground espionage agent in the Western Hemisphere. I've been trying to get my hands on him for years. What's his next move?
But since you asked, I'll give it to you straight.
There we go. Just get a nice even coating of water. No one place with more than another. And the arches watercolor paper is very, very thirsty. So it is going to soak up that water really quick. So we're going to let it soak in. And then we're going to put another little bit of water on there. And then we're going to go in with our paint mixture. But I want to make sure that I have a good amount of paint ready to go, because this needs to be done relatively quick. There we go. Okay, it seems to be soaking in. Let's get like a tiny little bit of water. Just want to make sure that there's no dry spots. And then we'll go right on in. I'm gonna get a little bit of pink and white. Mix that into the combination here. A little bit more pink, a lot of it more white. And then right down here, you can just mix together some cloud shadow color. And then I will clean the brush off and just put a bit of water in there, and we'll use that to blend this cloud color up. I would say I go through my blues probably the fastest. Probably. Now I'm going to take a little bit of damp paper towel. Yeah, you definitely go through a lot of white. Every time I get to a new spot here, I'm just gonna get a clean part of the paper towel and use it to subtract the area where the clouds go. We don't need to do a lot of these, but just enough to kind of get some nice cloud forms up there. Beautiful. Now I'll go in with my calligraphy brush and just kind of zoop up whatever I've got on the palette here, which is my white, my blue, a little bit of pink. Ooh, my stretch timer is going off. So after I finish doing these clouds, I have to do this relatively quickly because I want the clouds to end up looking good. And then back to that paper towel. Just to soften out these edges a little bit. There we go. And there's a little tiny bit up here. Of course, I'm not going for perfect accuracy, but I want to capture like the flavor of the wispy clouds that were out and about during the day. Heck yeah, we've got a chill hop playlist playing right now. I've got it over in Spotify. Currently doing the airplane mode jazz/lo-fi beats playlist, which I've been enjoying quite a bit, because for the longest time we had just been doing the standard chill hop like live playlist on YouTube, and it's nice to have a bit of a change of pace. Okay. Now I am going to do a stretch. So if y'all want to stretch along, feels good. Okay. So now we are going to establish a lot of those leaf forms, the shadows, the kind of undergrowth, and the glow behind them, which is going to be very fun. We're going to be using the 1-inch flat brush again, just like we did for the sky, and we're going to be using a very similar technique. So I'll go ahead and clean off what we have here on the palette. Mop up. There we go. Just mop it up there. All right. So for our behind the lilacs colors, I want those glowing yellow warm colors, the warm greens, and the cool greens to interact. So I'm going to have my clean water brush once again. I'll have that ready to go. I'm just going to mix into the yellow, a little bit of white, and then some primary blue to tint that off. But mostly I want that yellow color. We want to build up to like a vegetation green. Just very, very yellow. It can be hard to find a good balance for these green colors, because sometimes greens don't interact well with themselves, depending on where they fall in the warmth and the coolness. So you kind of have to just do a lot of playing around to find a good balance. Hey, Fairy Ghost. Yes, we're testing out a Monday stream, which is a thing that I would like to incorporate more into my schedule. Have an extra stream during the week. Monday feels like a nice comfy spot for it. A good chill start to everyone's week. So I'm going to get that clean water ready, and I'm going to go down in to pretty much everything that's not the sky here. And I'm going to wet that down with water. And I'm going to make sure that I've got my yellow color ready to roll. Nice yellowy green. I'm going to wait until that color is almost absorbed by, well, not the color, the water is almost absorbed by the paper, and then I'm going to dive right on in. Okay, it looks like it's getting there. It's always such an interesting thing, transitioning between winter painting and summer painting, because the environment changes so much in terms of humidity. And that's always something you have to keep in mind when you're working with a water-based medium, because humidity can change the drying time dramatically. So it's slightly more humid now. The air conditioner is helping a little bit to pull some of that moisture out of the air, but it's still definitely a thing. So the spots that have the most of that vegetation green color, that's where I'm really gonna just hit it off. It's especially prevalent down here. There's a lot of it sort of shining through. Over here as well. And then it bursts up and over, although I'll be working more opaquely over the top of these areas up here. But I want to establish where a lot of those shapes are. So I'm going to kind of be doing like an underpainting sort of thing. Now, yellow is a very transparent paint color, so you'll be able to see, like, you know, the clouds back here and all that kind of stuff until we go in with a thicker layer of paint. So I'm going to get all these sort of branches in place, all these ones that are jutting out and sticking up, and these will be the road map that will follow when we're actually establishing all of these. But it's really important that we get a lot of these light colors put on. Then we're going to go in and mix together a dark color. It's going to be that Windsor green and blue. Sort of a nice dense. Get some of this ultramarine as well, and a little bit of the Opera Rose to take it down even further, because red and green are opposites on the color wheel. So it's going to darken as well as take a little bit of that saturation out of it. And then we can go in and really establish some super dark areas here. So when it comes to things like this, when I'm looking at my reference image, I just sort of like unfocus my eyes and just look for the value in the piece. So areas of light and dark. Carrying these shadows down into this whole area down here, and this area down here is going to be quite dark. A lot of shadows, big blocks of shadows in here, and then sort of breaks in between where you can still see the sky. Now I'm going to switch over to the calligraphy brush just to help enhance some of those colors and shapes. I'm also going to dive into some different colors, maybe push it a bit more blue here and a bit more red there. And take some of the water out of the brush as well. So a very important thing at this stage is just to sort of keep an eye on the shapes and the relative sizes between the shapes. So we're looking for some hard edges on these shapes as well. So So up here where, you know, you get leaves against the sky, you want to really make sure that you're getting some nice leaf shapes. And it helps to sell the illusion a lot better. Hello to all the folks who are joining us. Hope you're doing well today. It's a bit of an impromptu stream. The subject that I'm painting right now is from a photograph that I took earlier today while I was out. It's just a nice lilac bush on a very, very sunny summer day. Got some little tiny guys up here, branching off. And then up here we've got some bigger shadow shapes. I'm going to drop those in, just sort of cut them in generally where you see them. And this side of the tree will be in shadow because the sun is up here and in behind slightly. So I have to always keep that in mind as I'm like lighting this scene. But I want to have a lot more fun working with and experimenting with layering of gouache and watercolor, just because it's such a versatile medium and it's always a shame to only use it in one specific way. So I've been trying to do a little bit more experimentation with wet application and layering of transparent layers, which is kind of what I'm doing here. You can still see the glow of the green shining through the shadows that I'm laying down because I'm not using an opaque passage. I'm kind of just going in with thinned down layers of paint, which gives it this really interesting effect. I need to make sure that these leaves are really subtle over on this tiny little branch. Welcome back, Redbird. But yeah, the idea that like a shadow pass only has to be one pass, I'm trying to break away from that mindset as well. You know, having this sort of blue-green shadow pass that I'm doing right now, where I'm just adding, you know, the shadows where I see them. I could also just go back in later on and add, you know, shadows in red. Could deepen the shadows, or I could try to lighten the shadows a little bit. And it can get a little squirrely if you know, mess with it too much, because eventually the colors will start to get extra muddy. But we want to keep it loose, we want to keep it light. Trying to go for sort of a playful, like in between, and just capture the essence of it. With leaves, I always try to think about the planes of leaves. So, you know, leaves look really sharp from one angle and then really flat and roundish from another. So I'm trying to keep that in mind as I paint these shapes. Thank you for the 2 gift subs, Lion. Appreciate it. Okay, now we're going to go back down into these areas down here where I had painted in the loose representations of the shadows, and now I'm just going to expand those ideas out into finer details. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue, a little bit more red for that kind of bright purpley mixture, and I'm just going to layer this in. A thing that I do really like, I have the option to do this thing where I'm laying on these transparent layers of color, because that's one of the things that gouache affords you, being similar to watercolor in that nature. But also, we have the option later on to go in over top of these dark colors and then re-add and reintegrate lighter colors, which is something I'll be taking advantage of quite a bit later on in this painting, when we have to add the lilacs over top. Thank you. I'm having a lot of fun with this one. I just love lilacs so much. I love looking at them. I love smelling them. It's definitely my favorite flower. Or plant? Is lilac a flower? I think it is. Okay, I'm going to dip down into yellow a bit more and add a bit of white into the mix. Kind of switch up how these leaves look a little bit. I'm still, basically what I'm doing right now is I'm still painting just the shadow leaves, not the light colored leaves, so I'm sort of painting underneath. So I'm gonna have to go back over top of these leaves with the actual light colored ones. Because I'm doing it this way, I can also paint in the stems. And it's always tempting when doing something like this to paint kind of willy-nilly and just put a bunch of, random blobs down, because it's nature. But nature has this sort of controlled chaos to it, where it's a bunch of chaotic systems that all kind of coalesce into something that resembles order. And leaves are definitely among that range. It's something I always try to keep in mind when I'm doing leaves and try to not go too wild. There still needs to be some element of, the random movement of nature. But also the leaves move in pods, they sort of travel as a pack, even though individually they're undulating. So it's important to remember to not go too wild. Exactly, something golden ratio. Okay, so I have a lot of these spots worked out now. I'm gonna go back into my palette and just kind of mop it up a little bit. Clean it off. I'm gonna need some fresh yellow. And I'm also, since I want a bit more opacity for these top layers, I'm actually going to go over into my acrylic wash. I'm going to grab the light green as well as the yellow. I need to order in a new set of acrylic wash soon because I would like to always have it on hand, and I'm very close to being at the end of these. So I'm going to get some of this golden yellow acrylic wash. And I'm putting more down proportionally than the other ones because you have to use it thicker, otherwise it won't be opaque. You can still water down acrylic wash. But you need to make sure that it goes down over a dry surface. It's very important. So I'm going to clean off my brushes here. Lovely. So now I'm going to get my hair dryer and I'm going to just go ahead and knock over my Nintendo Switch. I'm going to mute myself and dry off what we have so far. Actually, how close are we to... Okay, we're still a few minutes away from taking a stretch.
The operation is about to begin. The universe holds its breath at the audacity.
All right, now we've got that done. Can go in and start painting opaquely on top of what we've got here. So I'm going to go in with a subtle mixture. I'm not even going to go that extreme at first, so I'm just grabbing a little bit of that Winsor, and I'm grabbing some of that green acrylic wash. Now I need to make sure there's not a lot of moisture in the brush, so I'm just mopping it off a little bit. But I basically want a middle ground for the leaves that are appearing in the shadow. I want them to appear brighter than the shadow area, but not too bright. Hey, Pluto, how's it going?
They all know much, but understand little.
Okay. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of white and mix it in here. so now we can start building up a more three-dimensional feel inside of these shapes here. And there goes our stretch timer, so let's go ahead and have a quick stretch. Thankfully, this isn't affected by drying time or anything like that, so it's a perfect time to stretch, actually. Beautiful. So, what I need to remember is that I don't have to be precious about the initial, light yellow areas that I put down, because those are only meant to be the absolute highlights of the leaves. And everything else should be closer to this sort of medium green. Because the highlights don't have an effect if they're not highlighting anything. Then they would just be local color. So I'm going to cut these shapes and move them into being much more of a highlight sort of flavor color. And this will add nice dimension to the leaves, because you're starting to get leaves in front of other leaves and behind other leaves. Trying to create this sense of sort of luminosity, of looking up at the sky and the sun is slightly, it tinges what you see, right? It's the idea behind sort of lens flare effects and things like that. So you're trying to look at something, but it's obscured by the light. So with this nice opaque medium green, we're sort of going over top of and creating this sort of glow. Painting leaves very, very much. And we can carry these principles down into what we got going on down here. Especially because a lot of these highlights and things like that, they don't actually need to be as visible. So what I'm actually doing is cutting around like the light leaves. It's hard to say. I will say though about acrylic wash, be careful what you're mixing them on, because as you can even see from this, like if I try to scrub it away, it's already leaving permanent residue. If I just left it on my palette, it would like lock in. It basically turns into plastic. So you do have to be careful. It's always one of the most annoying things when I used to use ceramic plates to mix on. So you'd have to just go in there and scrub those things. It's always fun, right? I refer to making art like this, especially when you're sort of picking away at different sections of it and then making passes. The way that it comes into view always looks like the world's slowest magic trick. So that's how I always think about it. So I'm going to put a lot of medium tone over here. So I only really want tiny sparkles of light to shine through down in this area. It's a very slow magic trick because even though it does take a long time, it's kind of like watching a pot boil. Like, it's not boiling until it is, and then it's fully going. So even if you're watching, you're just kind of like, okay, all right. And then suddenly it clicks, and it's like, oh, whoa, is that what you're doing? Which is a big part of why I love watching people make art. Hey, Evie, how's it going? Yeah, trying out some Monday art streaming. I think I might make it a thing from now on. It feels quite nice. When I first became like fully freelance, you know, make my own hours, do whatever I want kind of thing for my job, one of the first things that I decided was that I never want to have like brutal deadlines on a Monday, because it gave me so much anxiety when I used to go to like school, and I hated it. I dreaded Mondays. It was like the worst day of the week for me. It gave me extreme anxiety. So I decided, like, if I'm in charge of anything, it's gonna be Mondays are for good vibes. And you know, over the course of the last 20 years, I haven't always been able to stick to that because that's how life is. But for the most part, if I'm able to, on Mondays, I have no harsh or scary deadlines. But not exactly to its detriment, but that has ended up with me kind of just sitting around twiddling my thumbs on a Monday now, especially since I started this streaming thing, because I have Sunday off and Monday off, so I kind of just am like, I'm kind of bored. And I ended up sitting around and doing that for enough Mondays in a row where I was like, I should just stream for a couple hours on Monday. Like, I'm painting and drawing anyway. I might as well just put on a show because it's fun and relaxing. Yeah, like literally what I do regularly on a Monday is just like draw something or paint something. Even if it's not to like post, it's just something that I like to do. I'm one of those nerds. I just love the beauty of creation.
Still gonna love me, man?
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of really good relaxing and breaks built into my schedule, so don't worry about that. For as much as I love to work, I'm old. It's just a fact of life now is that I'm old, so if something is making me feel bad or uncomfortable, I just am like, I'm gonna lay directly down and not bother. Okay, we need a couple more light leaves in the mix here. Gotta be so careful with your water control when you're using these acrylic washes. Hey, Pineapple, thank you. Big, bright, happy, sunshiny. For those who are just joining, exclamation point Discord in chat if you'd like to join the Discord. I actually posted up the photograph that I'm working on today in the art references section. So if you'd like to see what I'm working from, just go in there and you can check it out. It's a big painting of a lovely lilac bush. I said painting when I meant photograph. Every photograph a painting. No, thank you. I've been told my voice is rather calming, which I always appreciate. I feel like it wasn't always that way. Alright, so I've got lots of white and purple on the palette, so what I'm going to do at this point is clean up the palette best I can, because again, the acrylic wash, once it starts drying, it turns into like permanent plastic. Yeah, that's about as good as it gets. But that's okay. It is a good relief to know that it won't like lift up. So I'm not worried about that. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to get a little bit more purple. And then I'm going to go ahead and use... Sorry, I'm clicking around right now. I'm going to use my hairdryer again, dry this off completely, because we're going to put opaque lilacs on top of this now. And then we can start in on the final adjustments and touches, which should take about an hour, I think. So I'll just mute myself and do that. Got to make sure that it is absolutely bone dry before I go on to this next part. Hey, BZ Music, hello. Welcome, Raiders. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good Monday so far. Welcome in, make yourselves comfortable. We're just about to add some lilacs to this big, beautiful lilac bush. So I'm going to go ahead and get those colors prepped here. From Hungary. Neat. Well, hello, everybody. It's always nice to have some new folks stop by the stream. I'm going to mix together a lot of very opaque white paint with some Spectrum Violet to get this nice bright lilac color. I did indeed, yes. We started this painting just today. It's actually from a photograph. It's referenced from a photograph that I also took today, just before stream. I was out and I saw a big, beautiful lilac bush, so I snapped a photo and brought it back to make a little painting of it. So I'm going to make two colors really quick. I'm doing this very pale lilac color, and I'm also just going to do another version that's very, very, very white. So it's similar, but much brighter. And we're going to lay these in. Very opaquely. So almost no water. Just enough water to make the paint move. And then we're good to go. And I want the lighter color to be a little redder than the shadow color. So we're going in and we're just laying down all of those little lilac flowers. The paint that I'm using is Winsor & Newton brand gouache, which is very similar to watercolor, except it can go on opaquely as well as transparently. And there are so many little lilac... I always want to call them lilac corns, because that's what they look like. They look like ears of corn. But the ones up top I want to be very, very white. And this is where having water control is very important, because we don't want very much water, but we do still need enough to make it flow naturally. And it's also important to remember that the way the gouache dries is very specific. If you put something down that's a light color, it will dry darker, and a dark color will dry lighter, and that's because it's drying to a matte finish, not a shiny finish. So you'll notice these ones that are drying over here are already darkening down. Which is good, because we don't want them to be pure white. When we're putting them down, I'm basically painting almost a pure white on the surface, which is not what we want, but it needs to go down that bright in order to dry to the correct color. And that's just mostly trial and error. It's just painting a lot of paintings and understanding how it goes down. So I'm putting in all the little blocks of lilacs, even down into this deep dark area down here. I'm not going to put too many of the ones down there in, because for the most part, we want to get all the ones that are in the sunlight. Those are going to be the brightest. Those are lit by the sun. Again, the sun is up here and slightly behind the bush. So not all of them are going to be lit by the sun. In fact, the further down we go, the more I'm going to mix in this darker lilac color. And then they'll sort of have an ombre of getting darker and more shadowed as they go down. The water control is very similar between gouache and watercolor, but the effects that you'll get are not. So in terms of the flow, it has a very similar consistency, but generally speaking, you are using more water with watercolor, just because you're working in washes, even when you have darker colors being established. And with gouache, I would say over the course of an entire painting, you're going to be messing with the water a lot more, because usually, I mean, it definitely depends, because people use gouache in a lot of different ways and a lot of different styles. But the way that I do it, I start off my paintings with a very, very loose mixture. So I go in with the gouache almost exactly like I would for a watercolor. And I do my washes like we did with the sky. The sky was very wet into wet and very loose. But now, when we're working pretty opaquely with all of these lilac corns, generally speaking, we're not using that much water, just so we can establish a lot of very bright shapes, a lot of bold shapes, and a lot of shapes that won't fade as much. The more water that you add, the more thinned down and transparent it is, the more that the paint will fade as it dries. Well, not fade, but like darken. It definitely will not fade for a very long time, because gouache has a great light fastness rating. Should be good for at least a couple 100 years. I love adding in all of these lilacs. It changes the dynamic so much of the entire piece and all the space. And it especially will once we start establishing more of the shadows that are inside the lilac forms. Because right now I'm just putting on the lightest parts, which is not the whole story. Okay, so now I'm going to start mixing in this darker color. I'm going to mix directly into it, which means we're going to even out to a medium. And then I can just introduce more and more purple, and we can get darker and darker. I can even mix in a little bit of that blue. Generally speaking, as I get into the shadows of the lilacs, I want them to get cooler. And as I get into the light parts, I want them to get redder. So I'm going to wash a lot of the white paint off of my brush and go a little bit more directly into that dark purple and pull that down into the combination. And get a bit of the dark blue, a little ultramarine, but mostly stick to this Spectrum Violet color, which is a very bright, very bold purple. And these will be our much darker lilacs. Oh, it's time for a stretch. For those who don't know, I have a stretch timer set up for every 25 minutes so that we remember to keep our backs healthy, which is something that I'm usually very bad at. So I'm just going to stand up and take a quick stretch right now. Do I use watercolor brushes for my gouache paintings or more acrylic? I have a bunch of different brushes, but generally speaking, I stick to watercolor style brushes. The brushes that I use the most are my Jack Richardson travel brushes. They have short handles, so they travel really well. This is like my main guy. And then I use the calligraphy brush. This is a Japanese writing brush for a lot of my fine details, just because I find the natural hairs tend to give me a little bit more versatility within a single brush. Like I could switch off to a bunch of different rounds and get similar effects, but especially when I'm doing plein air and I'm just out and about, it's a lot easier just to bring a couple of brushes to take care of all my different painting needs. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more. A little bit blurrier zoomed in, but you get kind of the picture. You see a little bit more of these tiny details. I'm having an absolute blast on this one. I love bright, summery scenes, so this is 1000% up my alley. Thank you, Spider Knife. I appreciate that. It's definitely one of the things I prize the most about our streams and our community here. Very chill. Just very, very chill vibes. Which, frankly, has been helpful in the last year. I have needed the streams to keep me centered. Now, of course, the point here is not to paint every single individual lilac, but instead to get sort of an overall impression of the feeling, the lightness, the brightness, the excitement contained within. Let me see if I've got any burnt umber. I do. Okay. Actually, let me go over some red. There we go. Now I'm going to switch over to my rigging brush, which is this handsome fellow. It's got very, very, very long bristles. And I'm going to use one brush to mix the paint together. So I've got red and I've got Windsor green. And if you mix those two, they're opposites on the color wheel. So they dull out and turn into a very dark color. Very, very dark. I'm going to use that to make some little branches. Animal or landscape documentary, huh? That does sound fun. I love putting these little tiny details here. I love painting in the branches and the sort of the connective arms of all of these little shapes. As soon as you take these kind of blob formations and add a little branch, suddenly you start to see natural forms just appear out of nowhere. Yeah, let's not say anything we can't take back. Pizza's pretty amazing and beautiful. But thank you. Now down in here, we've got even more little branch forms to make. into that color. Just kind of dot around. Again, we'll make sure that the palette is nice and clean. And we'll need a dry surface, but thankfully the area we've been working on up here is very, very dry already. So I'm going to go back into the acrylic wash one last time.
You know, love is an incredible thing, and we don't know love like we should.
I'm just mixing a couple more. Just a couple more colors here out of the acrylic wash that's left on the palette. So I can put in a few more tiny little leaves here and there.
That's love.
See you later, Lion. Thank you, Momo. Oh yeah, Liar, you might not have been here when I explained this. So it's based on sub points, and those disappear when people's subscriptions wear out. So that's why it fluctuates up and down. To get my URL, it actually wasn't that much. I just happened to find one that people weren't caring about. Yeah, one day we were all like looking up vanity URLs on Google, and somebody was like, hey, the .fyi URL like domain is free. And I was like, wait, what? And then so I started just coming up with jokes. And one of the jokes was I'm broke.fyi, and I didn't say it out loud because I'm like, I don't want anyone else to get this, and I immediately went and bought it. And I think it was only like $13 or something. It's definitely one of the best purchasing decisions I ever made. So now I'm adding in tiny, tiny little delicate leaves in the underbrush here. just to give it a little bit more texture. Yeah, I think it was like literally just no one knew about the .fyi domain or like thought that they were interesting at all. So they were all just like super duper cheap. It's the opposite of what happened with the art domain, because all the .art domains are incredibly expensive because they knew people would be using them for businesses. So those immediately got snapped up like preemptively, which is annoying. I was looking at Eiffel.art at one point. Yeah, I know. Yeah, trust me. I've spent a great deal of time fretting over whether or not I should buy Eiffel.art. But at the end of the day, it was just way too expensive for a thing that, like, no one really uses websites anymore. So it would have, yeah, it would bankrupt me. So it's very expensive to buy Eiffel.art. Unfortunately. Well, I think that is just about good. I want to put a couple of more small leaf details up at the top. So I'm just going to grab some primary blue and some yellow. Doesn't it look really funny when it's mixing the paint together? I love it. It makes kind of figure eights. It's very interesting to watch. So I'm just adding a little bit more background visual interest up at the top here, because I want there to be, you know, because these lilacs up at the top are very lit. They're very, like, they've got that glowing light around them, but you can't really see it too well because there's nothing behind them. In the actual photograph, there's more blue sky up and behind them. But I'm just going to add a little bit more dark foliage as a way to kind of make them pop a bit more. So let's zoom back out. There we go. Get a better sense of some of these details now. What a lovely chill Monday stream this has been. I'm excited to add more of these to the stream schedule. Another chance for us to hang out, do a little bit of chatting about art and making some stuff. Some really nice appealing leaf shapes on this structure here. Oh, the stretch alarm is going off yet again. But I'll wait on stretching on that one because we are pretty much at the end of our stream today. So I'll wrap up by saying once again, exclamation Discord in the chat if you would like to join the Discord. We mostly talk about food and post our art and hang out. And it's also a really easy way to get announcements when I go live, which is handy dandy if you often miss them on the app or anywhere else. I'm going to do the satisfying tape peel, so get your tape emotes ready, subscribers. So we're going to go in on hopefully getting a nice clean peel on this one. Ooh la la. Look at this.
Total galaxy. The real deep down you.
Oh, you'll love to see it. You'll love to see a clean peel.
And it's doing. Your living organism and all its behavior.
There we go.
It's expressing it as a singer sings a song.
Yeah, we've got a good, great many streams coming up this week. Very excited about it. I'm going to sign this little friend. It is the last day. Today is the last day of May, 31st. 2021. Soon we'll be into the 6th month of the year. This one will be up in the shop right after the stream is over. And I believe that Abby is currently streaming. Let me verify that. Yeah, Abby's playing some Sims 4 over there, so I'm going to send everyone over for some Abby fun. So let's do raid BBY. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and hanging out. We will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back hanging out, having a good time, chilling, just like today. We'll be doing gouache again. So if you are into what you saw today, come on back tomorrow. We'll be doing it all over again. Take care of yourselves. Have a great evening / morning / whatever it is, wherever you are. And I will see you tomorrow. Let's go show Abby some love. It's very rare that I get to raid Abby's stream. She always raids mine, so this is nice. Goodbye, everyone.
Probably should.